Welcome, everyone. We're so glad you're joining us. My name is Dr. Natasha Falahi, the Sensitive Doctor, and I'm very excited to introduce our special guest today, Dr. Karen Kan. Dr. Karen Kan is a doctor of light medicine and a #1 international best-selling author, visionary, and pioneer in the fields of healing, consciousness, and spirituality. Her mission is to empower spiritually conscious people to harness their intuitive healing and manifesting superpowers so they can reach their highest vibration and help anchor in a brand new reality of love, joy, peace, and harmony for all. Dr. Karen, it is a great pleasure to have you joining us today. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Natasha. I'm so happy to be here.
We're so excited to have you, and I'm really excited to have this conversation too. I know we're going to dive into a bunch of interesting and amazing topics, plus do a demo. So have everyone stick around because we're going to do some live healing here with Dr. Karen. But I'd love to know how you got into the work that you do. What is the why? Do you have a story around being an empath or a sensitive person, or how did you get into this whole world of what you're doing?
Thanks for the question. I think a lot of highly sensitive people, I call them sensitive souls, grow up with the criticism from other people that they're too sensitive. They hear, stop being so sensitive, grow thicker skin and all that kind of thing. And I heard that growing up. My mother is a highly sensitive person, and I saw that she was being criticized by other members of the family. I saw that her psychic powers, if you will, was ridiculed. So I swore I was going to be tough and I was not going to be so sensitive. Unfortunately, that's who I was. So I tried to be someone who I was not, and did grade A in school and did really well in medical school. But that's when things started to fall apart because I didn't honor that sensitivity. So as you can imagine, in medicine, you're seeing really sick people, people dying, cancer, children with illnesses. So it started to build up. I started, unfortunately, absorbing a lot of those emotions from people, the burden. And I started feeling more and more burdened and heavier and heavier. I didn't understand it was, energetic and emotional at that time. So by the time I graduated from medical school and started my own practice, I had my own issues with a failing marriage, being in UCLA and assistant professor there. There were political problems there. So all this stress added up and I broke down. So my body broke down. I ended up with chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, autoimmune disease, multiple chemical sensitivity, depression, anxiety, and was even feeling like killing myself at that point. Oh. And I really did want to end it all. I did not understand that my sensitivity was part of the issue. Luckily for me, I kind of surrendered, almost gave up. And in kind of like the still of the night, as I'm sobbing myself to sleep yet again, I actually heard a voice. It was my own voice, but I heard a voice inside my head that says, you have a choice. It's very matter of fact, just, now I understand that intuition comes like that. That is very matter of fact. It's not like this, drama-ridden diatribe that comes through. And of course, I argued with the voice. But at the end of the day, it was very persistent and she said, you have a choice. You have a choice. So I decided I was going to make a typical choice, and that was to divorce my husband at the time. And really, I chose to live. So I stopped thinking about killing myself. I started seeking teachers, healers, started reading a lot of things on natural medicine that I was not taught in medical school. Come to find out, there was a lot that I was not taught in medical school about not just, being healthy, but actual healing. And so after about 2 years, I cured myself of much of what I was going through. And then it kept getting better and better. And I started applying what I learned to my patients. They started getting better in a way that I'd never seen before, especially with chronic illnesses. And so I just kind of dove headlong into whatever it is was coming up for my patients to try to help them. And then I discovered, energy medicine, light medicine, the emotion code, the body code, divine muscle testing, and realizing, wait a second, the reason that this is working so well for me is because I am a sensitive soul. And now I've actually accepted that instead of trying to push it away. And now it's become what I call my superpower, which is why I wrote my book, Sensitivity is Your Superpower, because I love teaching other people to tune in and tap into that sensitivity, which they might have thought was a curse before, and can contribute to worsening symptoms of autoimmune and adrenal fatigue and all that kind of stuff. But once you have it as a superpower, now you can use it for, tapping into your intuition, your healing powers, your manifesting powers. So that's my story. And I am so passionate about helping other sensitive souls really harness that sensitivity as a superpower.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That's really an amazing transformation. I'm so glad you went through it and you're able to help other people through that process. I mean, it honestly sounds pretty much the same as my story in terms of just, mystery symptoms, rock bottom, and then really finding that pivotal point at which you find this holistic and root cause of your own healing and turn around autoimmune disease, just like I did, and chronic fatigue and all of those chronic conditions. I think that's something that is becoming really better understood, is this connection between somebody's disposition or our different qualities, like our sensitivity, and the connection to things like the suffering that we experience or, the chronic illness. And you brought up another really, really important topic, is the relationships that we have as sensitive people. And I know that you focus a lot on that and you teach people how to evolve their relationships. So tell us a little bit about that in terms of being a sensitive person in a relationship, sometimes with a not sensitive person, or if two sensitive people are in a relationship. What does that look like? Because I think that's a common issue for a lot of our listeners and people who are sensitive. They may not even realize it, but this kind of the way they're approaching things in a relationship, and how you can kind of be yourself and even have disagreements in that relationship, but still have peace and harmony within yourself.
Yeah, this is definitely a really sticky point with people that are empaths and sensitives because they feel so much, right? So not only are they feeling their own emotions, however, old they are, if they're unresolved, but they're feeling their partners and their children's and their coworkers and their boss's emotions. And unless they know whose stuff it is, a lot of times it impacts them, not just emotionally, but then physically, because it's like a heavy weight. It's like carrying around baggage around all day long. And unfortunately, or fortunately, how it works is that empaths, especially those that are not as balanced as they could be, tend to attract who we call narcissists as their primary partners. There's something about that relationship, and those partners have equal responsibility in creating that relationship dynamic. So it's not like the narcissist is the villain, right? And the empath is the victim. We don't want villains and victims here. So we all contribute to these dynamics. And so the narcissist is the person that only thinks about him or herself. And everything they do is right. Everything you do is wrong. And unfortunately, they have a tendency to suck the energy of an empath. So empaths will feel like they're less than, they're not good enough. But here's the thing, they already have that theme from childhood, right? Because people told them, stop being so sensitive. Why are you so sensitive? You need to be fixed. Those kinds of things, unfortunately, that many of us hear growing up. So they give their power away very easily. And it's like the narcissist can smell it a mile away and they're attracted to that empath and they suck and suck and suck until, something has to give. And oftentimes it's the empath that ends up sick, literally physically sick and tired, and feeling damaged, feeling hurt, feeling completely vulnerable and powerless. And at that rock bottom, that's when a lot of us take that as, okay, something's got to give here. And I was lucky in a way that my first husband, even though he was a narcissist, he was a very mild narcissist. And the empath needs to learn what the narcissist qualities are that they are pushing away. So here's the thing is when we're in a relationship with someone we're in conflict with, a lot of times the thing that they do well is something we don't do well. So the narcissist knows how to really trust who they are and stand up for themselves, and they don't let other people tell them that they're wrong. There are gifts to that. And so the empath, if they learn some of that, and I realized that after I divorced my first husband, what he was doing in my life is to learn that self-sufficiency, that self-reliance, that self-trust. I was like, oh, that's why we're in a relationship. So if we can reframe, if all empath and sensitive souls can reframe all of their relationships to say, hey, especially if there's conflict, what is it in this relationship that I'm supposed to be learning or evolving or changing? And for some people, their goal has been to change the other person. I mean, I'm sure you've seen that, right? I've been there, I've done that, tried to change the other person, try to fix them, because somehow they feel like if they only understood energy healing, if they only understood their emotions, they could be so much better. And here's the thing, the reason we do that is because we don't feel enough. So then we project the not enoughness to someone else, and then we try to fix them. Whereas all they really wanted in this relationship, honestly, at the end of the day, is love. We wanted love, we wanted acceptance. So here's the cool thing. In chapter 8 of my Sensitivity is Your Superpower book, I have a process I call Transformational Telepathy. And I have found in practice with my clients, with my patients, myself, that this is an amazing tool and technique to harmonize relationships. Even if you're with someone who is very narcissistic, or even someone who's very negative, because at some point you were attracted to that person, right? So you can find something that they do well, something that they're positive, and that's what the transformational telepathy process does. And before we actually go into the process, I'll just tell a little bit of the background. So this is us being empaths, being sensitives, using a superpower. Now, in this case, it is the ability to feel, the ability to understand how the other person feels, and being able to feel into other energies like appreciation, gratitude, and love. And in this process, what happens is if we have conflict with someone, there's friction. When we release that friction within ourselves, then that actually moves the relationship forward and improves it. But what a lot of people do is that they're angry at someone, they're having a conflict, they just want to avoid it, and they just, when they think about that person, they go, oh my God, I don't want to think about that person, right? Like they just don't want to go there. It's not comfortable. And empaths tend to not like to say no. And the reason they don't, well, I figured this out after many years. One of the reasons they don't want to say no is because not only do they feel their own, guilt, I suppose, for not helping, because empaths almost across the board are helpers, but they don't like to feel no because they don't want to feel the anger and disappointment of the other person. Because they're empaths, they have to deal with the other person's emotions too. So yeah, it's one thing to go, well, if they get angry, it's not your thing, it's their thing. But empaths, it's kind of our thing too, because we feel that, right? We feel that negativity, we feel that anger, and we don't want to feel that. So we'd rather just say yes. However, in this transformational telepathic process, what we're doing is I know it sounds really simple, but I got to tell you, I'll tell you a story. It just dramatically can change relationships. Anyone that you want to have a better relationship with, doesn't have to be conflict. You do this process. So what we do, there's 3 steps. There is the write it, feel it, and release it. So the first one, write it. What you're doing is every day for 30 days straight, you're writing down in private. You're not telling the other person you're doing it. You put their name at the top of a piece of paper or journal, and you write down 10 things you appreciate about that person. Now, when we're in conflict, sometimes we kind of sit there going, can't think of anything. Okay. But if we can dig deep and remember what it is we were attracted to that person, or what do we love about them? And even if someone's a narcissist and you're really having a hard time liking them right now, you can still appreciate them for their ability to be trusting, or their ability to, the gift of gab, their ability to manipulate a situation to their benefit. I mean, those are skills, right? So we can actually appreciate even things that supposedly are not as, Good.
Mhm.
And when we write down these 10 things, the next step is to feel it. So we've written down these 10 things we appreciate about the other person. Sometimes we have to dig deep. Sometimes we can just come up with like, I like how the way your earrings match your shoes. And that's all we can come up with. It's still good. Then we feel it. So we feel into that appreciation. And empaths can be really good at this. They can tune into the feeling of appreciation. And what happens is as your heart feels that, you start projecting that outwards. And whoever it is that you've written down on that page, they start to feel that too on an energetic level. When we're angry at them, all they feel is pushback. And of course, they want to push back. That's natural. But when we get into that space of appreciation, that friction is released and they start feeling it on there. They don't know why they feel better about you. They just do. It's kind of magic. And then the third step is release it. So release is just any residual friction or feeling bad. There's a number of ways we talk about it in the book, but it could be, tapping like EFT. I usually do heart tapping, or you could just ask your angels to help you release the rest of the friction or the emotion that you're feeling. There's lots of different ways of doing it. By doing this for 30 days in a row, oftentimes they get results in 24, 48 hours, but we, for the process, especially for beginners, we say do it 30 days in a row and it can transform your relationships. And Dr. Natasha, if it's okay, I'd love to give an example of how that's happened.
Yeah, absolutely. This sounds amazing. I'd love an example.
Thank you. So I had a patient who had fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome. This is, quite a while ago. He came into the office one day and he was beside himself. He was so stressed. I could see him literally shaking. I said, "What is going on?" I'll call him Bill. "What's going on, Bill?" And he said, "It's my son. He's in the hospital." I said, "What happened?" He goes, "He tried to kill himself," and he's crying. So my patient's crying. He's freaking out. And he's like, "And I can't go there because I don't have money to go there. And I'm too sick to go." And, so he's freaking out. And I finally, listened to him, let him settle down. I said, "Okay, Bill, would you like to make a shift and to help your son? But it's not going to require you to travel and it's not going to require any money." And he goes, "I'll do anything. I'll do anything." Right. So I said, "Look, we don't have permission to heal him per se, but here's the exercise." So I taught him the transformational telepathy exercise. I said, "Are you committing to doing this 30 days straight?" He goes, "Yes." I said, "Okay, it's free, right? So I'm not going to call your house every day to remind you." He says, "I'm going to do it." So he leaves, right? And I think he missed an appointment. He came back several weeks later and I couldn't wait to hear what happened. So I said, "How is your son?" And Bill looks at me and goes, "My son?" I said, "Yes, the one you told me about last time, who's in the hospital and tried to kill himself. Like, is he on medication? Like, what's going on?" He goes, "Oh, he's fine. Fine. Yeah, he got out of the hospital in 2 days." And I said, "Well, did they put on medication or?" No, they didn't. He's back to work and he's doing great." And I was like, "Let me just acknowledge, did you do the 30-day transformational telepathy?" "Oh, yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. It felt really good." I was like, "Well, hey, this is what you did." But we see this, Dr. Natasha, over and over again. Anytime I have like a little argument or misunderstanding with a friend, I immediately go into transformational telepathy. Even if I'm hopping mad, I'll be like, okay, settle down. What do I appreciate about this person? And as an empath and sensitive, you can go even beyond that. We call that level 2, where you actually can even talk to them on the etheric level without them being there.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that technique. I think this is such an important topic that comes up a lot in the empath community, because when we talk to, healers and even other experts, a lot of it's focused on, our internal experience as empaths and understanding self-love and understanding ourselves better and setting up healthy boundaries. But this is a really wonderful and practical practice and tool for people to actually go outside of themselves and apply this to their relationships and to the external world, which is really, really amazing. So to summarize, it's kind of this concept of letting go of friction and negative feelings within ourselves. And that ends up radiating outward and resonating and raising the vibration, the frequency, not only in our experience, but also very realistically in our relationships as well. And so this is something that everyone can do. But I have a little bit of an advanced question for people who maybe have tried this before, because I know I worked with a lot of empaths and a lot of clients, and sometimes they get to this hurdle where they naturally tap into that empathy of feeling and appreciating and going into it and trying to release that within themselves. But some people end up in this predicament where they end up being a doormat, and they end up always trying to find the good and the, appreciation in the other person, but there's something blocking them from really fully changing that resonance. So can you create that distinction for us about the difference between someone kind of being a doormat or always yielding or always trying to be the positive person in that situation, or, the light and the appreciation, versus this transformational telepathy that you're describing that actually radiates out and changes energetic frequencies outside of us?
Well, that is a fantastic advanced question, Dr. Natasha. Thank you so much for asking that. There definitely is a difference and also discernment in this space that a lot of people, those of us that are empaths and sensitives, have been taught that be nice, right? Be kind, be considerate. And guess what? We are freaking experts at that. Okay, you don't need to teach us that. Okay, we are experts at it. The issue comes up that there is both energetic action and then there's actual 3D world action. So they're complementary in that you can both be in a space where we are working on ourselves, which we often like to do anyway, but we work on ourselves. And at the same time, part of that work is being able to discern when, and this is part of the intuitive superpowers, when it is appropriate to take certain actions and not other actions. So we do like to see the best in others. That is a gift, to be able to see the best in others. Now, the opposite side of that is we should also be willing to see where people are currently at in their consciousness. And this is where we get stuck, because we see their source within, we see that golden nugget in there. It's kind of lost in a pile of stuff, okay? But all we see is that golden nugget, right? So what that means is we're not willing to accept that person for where they are at in their evolution right now. And that's our stuff still. That's our stuff still, because we want so badly for them to be either like us or resonate at this level that we treat them as if they're there already when they're not. Because they may not have the ability to feel like we do. Like my first husband used to be like 6 weeks after I got mad at him, "Are you mad at me?" I'm like, F yes. He said, "For how long?" 6 weeks. Okay. That's on me too, because I didn't tell him, right? I wasn't able to communicate because part of me was still hoping he would catch on, hoping he would understand, right? But he's not the empath. So we have to be both realistic as we are idealistic at the same time. And that's where, honing our superpowers is really, really helpful, because the reason we don't have healthy boundaries or don't take action that is for our highest and greatest good is because we're too afraid of the consequences. So that part we can do healing on ourselves. How do I not be afraid? How can I speak my truth without that fear? And how can I be loving? And by the way, codependency is not love. So codependency means I'm going to do something so they don't get upset. We do that to save ourselves from feeling bad. So when I understood that, and I realized that I was actually manipulating other people because I didn't allow them to have negative feelings because I didn't want to have to feel it, I realized this was not the way to go. That was not kind. That was not considerate. That was not empathetic. I was literally trying to control them. Oh, that felt really ugly.
Yeah, definitely. Because that's not, we're sensitive and we know how that feels. And a lot of times it's a subconscious thing. And when we start to realize, wow, I was doing this thing that doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to be on the receiving end of manipulation. We almost become really critical of ourselves and kind of spin into that. But it's really important to understand, like you're talking about this, really understanding and identifying codependency, and also these kind of bonds that we have with people where we're not really looking at where they are, really allowing them to have that experience themselves. A lot of times we look at their potential or what we want for them, but we don't actually look at who they are or where they are currently showing up in their journey, in their path. I mean, that's really kind of the kindest thing we can do, is really accept people for where they are, just like we want to be accepted. And I think you're bringing up so many kind of really important and really touchy subjects that I think it's hard for a lot of people to talk about. It's easy for us to talk about, like, just love more, but you're really talking about these difficult situations where you're dealing with narcissism or you're dealing with codependency. So for people who feel a little bit scared to admit that they're in that situation, or they know they are in that situation, is there hope for that changing and improving and shifting? Or is it something that sometimes we hear about, oh, this is toxic and you just have to cut it out and change your life completely? I think a lot of people feel that fear of, like, they don't want to acknowledge it because they think, well, there are things that I value or I love or I need in this relationship or this dynamic. So can you tell us about that? Is it one way or the other? Like, is it possible to transform a situation that is codependent or has that narcissist empath dynamic? Or is this something that, once recognized, it needs to just be exited?
Well, there are times definitely where a quick exit is probably the safest. And those are times where someone's life is in danger. Obviously, we're not talking about abuse and staying with abuse, right? So we want to be really, really clear that sometimes, yeah, you need to physically remove yourself from that situation. Here's what I see, though, is if we do not deal with the underlying issues related to those codependencies, related to us wanting things for other people that we can't even, give to ourselves, then we'll just attract another relationship like that over and over and over again. So aside from the immediate, danger and getting out, if we can make a reframe and go, wow, okay, so I'm in this relationship, it's really uncomfortable, and somehow it's supposed to help me. How could it potentially help me, right? And maybe it helps you because you learn to stand up for yourself. You learn to say no, even though it's uncomfortable. You learn to be able to go, well, you know what? I no longer want to be controlling of that other person's feelings, which means I need to tell the truth. And telling the truth is not a judgment. It's not like you're an idiot. That is not telling the truth, okay? Telling the truth would be like, wow, when you just said that, my heart dropped and I felt short of breath and I'm really uncomfortable right now. That's telling the truth.
Yeah, I love that. I love not
difference.
Yeah, the difference between kind of projecting your fears, your insecurities, your stories onto the other person versus really tapping into what you gave examples of, were like physical sensations you're having in your body, or, a true emotion like feeling scared or sad, or, those types of ways, those ways of telling the truth versus spinning stories or manipulations and then spewing them on people, which is not telling the truth.
Right, exactly. And even though people would go, well, gee, Dr. Karen, it sounds pretty easy when you say it. It's not. But at the same time, every empath that I've met, every sensitive soul I met has a bigger role and a mission in this lifetime. And so now that I know that all of the sensitive souls have this bigger role, it's almost like, okay, let's choose to do what's hard. Because when you choose to do what's hard, what other people find hard is going to be easy for you. So one of the things that's hard for us is that relationship harmony, because we want to give in, so we have the harmony, but then more gets taken over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
So instead, if we can get to a place where we realize, okay, I'm ready to tell my truth, no matter what the consequences are, then we start to be able to tap into that freedom. And that other person may be there in your life on purpose so you can get to that point. So we can be grateful and in gratitude for that.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that right there is hope in and of itself. Sometimes when we share that and we speak authentically and head, on our own destiny and journey, the people around us also evolve with us. And sometimes they don't. And I think that that's really important, but it's important not to hold yourself back just for that fear of how that change might look, right? Because I think sometimes that ends up being the paralysis that a lot of empaths don't really want to acknowledge or look at a lot of these things you're describing. Like codependency is so common among our community, or getting in these relationships where you are with people that you want to fix them or you want to caretake them or those sort of things. And that's really where we hear this commonality, that narcissist empath connection. And also, like we talked about at the very beginning, how it leads to chronic illness, this recognition of the type C personality, the caretaker that ends up really developing things like cancer or even autoimmunity because they're betraying themselves through that process, right? They're not standing up for their own needs. So, this is all such, important stuff. It's hard stuff to look at sometimes, but once you do, it opens up that freedom like you talked about. So I'd love for you to go more into some of your healing methods and your tools as people now can recognize that there is hope in this process. It's not all just recognizing the difficulties in our life, right? There's ways of transforming that.
Right. Yes. Thank you for that. I absolutely resonate with everything that you said. It's such an important area. And nowadays, what happens is if I start to feel a little annoyed or friction, and it may not even be, somebody that I am close to, I could start feeling irritated at the president or at a company or something like that. Then I know that is my hint, to go into what I call STOIM, which is stillness through observing internal movement. And that's my version of meditation and being still while I'm doing other things, being while doing. I go into there and then I realize that any sort of friction is something that is in the way for me to manifest that harmony and joy and peace, not just for me, but for all. So it is my job as the empath, as the sensitive soul, to work on myself, not because there's anything wrong with me or I'm bad or anything like that for having negative feelings. It's just like, oh, I'm human. Okay. So now what do I do with it? Right. And then see it from another light, re-perceive whatever's going on, be like, wow, okay, somehow this is for my highest and greatest good. I have no idea why. Right now I'm really annoyed. And I'm going to acknowledge that and figure out how I'm going to love that. And then what I'm going to do. Right. And so I do transformational telepathy on the fly at this point, where I don't necessarily always write it down, but I go, well, how does this serve me? How can this possibly serve me? And then I start making up reasons how it could serve me. And then I start feeling better. And then the friction's gone. I'm like, okay, that's it. So we can actually apply the transformational telepathy process to many different areas of our life, not just to our closest relationships. And Dr. Natasha, I'd love to share with people how you could heal someone, even if you don't have permission, by using an advanced version of this process, if you're okay with me doing that.
Absolutely. I think we are all itching to hear of that, because I think that's something that as empaths, we really feel for others and we want to be able to help and serve. And so if there's ways that we can use our energy to bring more goodness into the world, please share with us, Dr. Karen.
Fantastic. And this also applies to people that you may not know. For example, I used to walk past my dad when he was watching the news. He's quite enamored, let's just say enamored with the news. So when I was visiting, I'd walk past the news and I'd, hear all this negative news. And as an empath, I'd start crying, like I just, all these hurt, the people now I know half of it's made up, but still I could feel the emotions. It was so powerful. I just couldn't stand it. I would like run away, Then later I thought, well, wait a second, if this really is truly happening in the world, is there something I can do? So what I started training myself to do is, if I happened to pass by and there was some negative news on there, I would go into my own being and I would start asking for help. So I'd ask the angels for help. I said, can you please help these people? And I would start seeing them more healthy, more happy, joyful, whatever, basically the opposite of whatever was happening to them. And interestingly, I thought, wow, I feel better. And here's the thing, I felt like I did something positive, even though it was just the news on Afghanistan or wherever it is. I don't even know these people. But here's the cool thing. Now that I know that everything's made of energy, and we know that our thoughts, our feelings, our attention in the, seeds the quantum with new realities, I am doing something. And we each can do something very powerfully by being in that space of peace and stillness ourselves, and then asking for help. or even projecting the ideal reality. So this is what I wanted to share this. And this is so easy. This is so easy, but so powerful, and people don't know about it. So say you have someone that you love that is ill or sick. And I'll give you an example. So my uncle basically had some sort of cold symptom, and he was getting better. So he decided he was going to go back to training in his swimming. He's a competitive, mature swimmer. I think they call them masters swimmers. And so he was swimming with some colleagues and some friends, and his heart stopped. So they were doing CPR. Luckily, thank you, universe. He had 2 nurses there that happened to be there training with him that night. So they were doing CPR for 20 minutes. They finally found the automatic defibrillator. They shocked him back into rhythm, but he had no oxygen to his brain for 20 minutes. And he was in the hospital. They put him in an artificial coma for now. And they said to the family, look, what we've seen is people that don't have oxygen to the brain, they kind of, in my mother's words, wake up being a vegetable. So he may not have brain function. We really don't know right now. We'll do everything we can. Now, my uncle is not into woo-woo energy healing stuff at all. Okay. So I was kind of stuck. I'm like, okay, what do I do here? Right? Like, is there something I can do? So now, this may not be appropriate for everyone, but I actually, as an aside, did connect with his higher self. And I said, I would love permission here, So I did get permission to do energy work. But one of the most important things that everyone can do that I did was I saw him well. So I didn't even go visit him in the hospital. Of course, he was in another country, but I saw him well. I saw him the way I remember him when he's happy, he's joyful, he makes fun of us. He has this funny little smile that he does and these jokes like that he makes, right? So I'm actually thinking about him laughing. How many people, when their loved one is sick, think about them laughing or happy? No, they think about what they look like right now. They're sick, they're in pain. Oh my God, oh my God. And they're going downhill emotionally. But that doesn't help anybody, because that your morphic field of love just kind of shrinks when you do that. But if you can be in that place where you see them well, you see them laughing, and in the advanced transformational telepathy, we actually talk to them. And I talked to a lot of people in comas. And we talked to them. And in this case, I said to my uncle, I said, that granddaughter of yours, boy, she loves you to pieces. I think she really wants you to hang out, like if you want to go, if you need to go, that's okay. Bless you on your way, but she really would love you back. And so would we. And, so I'm talking to him this way. I'm seeing him well. So within about 24, 48 hours, they take, the vent out, and he wakes up. And the first thing is like, he starts complaining to the nurses. No brain damage, speaking in perfect English, and my aunt is like, he's back, right? So between, the Western medicine and this transformational telepathy, we did a lot of great work there, and he had no deficit from that. He should have. He should, quote unquote, have been brain dead. So there are many, many, many times this has happened. He actually went through something else recently where he had cancer and he was bleeding. Anyway, so we did lots of work there as well. And he did give overt permission. Fine. He's fine. So we can do this every time someone has difficulty. We feel our son's they're depressed. Hey, instead of worrying about them being depressed, see them happy, see them well, see them the way you would like to see them. That's the sensitive having their superpowers.
Wow. Yeah, that is so powerful, because I think as sensitive people, we tend to kind of catastrophize or worry because we can feel all these things, and we go, what if this is, a premonition or an omen or something that's coming? And we start to focus on the fears and the worst case scenario. And I heard somewhere once, and I think it really stuck with me and changed my life and my mindset. There was a statement that I heard somewhere that said, worry is a wish for something you don't want. And that blew my mind, because I was like, wow, all this energy that we're putting into worry or anxiety, we're just continually wishing for the thing that we don't want to happen, and actually manifesting that with the energy that we're putting into it. So this is such an amazing, advanced tool, but something that all of us have access to, where we really shift our energy to focus on something that we actually want, that we actually wish for, And this can be done, like you said, with permission for somebody else who may not really be into energy medicine or things like that, by tapping into their higher selves. It's really amazing. I think that's such an important point that can really quickly help us get out of places that drive our own anxiety and stress, in our own lives.
Right. And the cool thing is we never need permission to love. Right. We may need permission to do topical healing or muscle testing on someone to fix some, imbalance. Yeah, you might need permission for that, but you don't need permission for love. And when we see the person happy, healthy, joyful, that is just your vision of their ideal future. And that is allowed. You're allowed to see people that way, and yourself. Here's the cool thing: you can do transformational telepathy on yourself. So write down things you appreciate about yourself, and see yourself well and happy, and actually use that super skill to help yourself as well.
Wow. I feel like, you could have just come on today, said, we never need permission to love, and we would have all gotten so much value out of that. This has been amazing. And really learning these tools has been a transformational, practical thing that people can do. So, those of us who are new to your work, or the listeners or viewers today who want to go deeper and want to learn more, can you share with us where they can, get more of this information? Do you work with people one-on-one still? Do you have workshops? You mentioned your book. Tell us how we can go deeper into this.
Well, definitely, I think that one of the number one steps, the best way, is to actually read my book, Sensitivity is Your Superpower. So I think we're going to post a link, underneath the video or near the video, so people can access that. And this is a special link because it actually has $1,000 worth of gifts and bonuses as part of my book launch. And I decided just to keep the bonuses to gift to people, because there is an MP3 in there that's one of the freebies. It's called the Sensitive Soul Rescue Remedy. It's actually an energy infused, light medicine infused MP3 where you listen to it. There's a training that goes so you just know what we're doing, but we actually help people balance what we call their clairs, their clairsentience, clairaudience, clairvoyance, because sometimes as we grow and evolve, sometimes we get jumps in our abilities, but we don't know how to control them. So that MP3 helps with that healing process. It also helps them with integrating and grounding some of those newer, higher vibration energies in the body, because sometimes there can be, glitches and delays in that integration. It can cause a lot of discomfort. And then there's actually a protocol we call the Siri Protocol, where we dial down the sensitivity, intensity, reactivity, resistance, and excess empathy that isn't actually necessary for our mission or what we what we need to do on a daily basis. Sometimes our dial is just way up there and we feel everything. And that is not always, necessary for us to do that. Just because we have the skill doesn't mean we have to have it on 10 out of 10 all the time. So there's lots of great bonuses there. And the Transformational Telepathy chapter is chapter 8 in the book. And I think this is the best place for people to start. And I also do have a free guide called the Sensitive Soul Empowerment Guide, the 3 ways of navigating your way to more peace. What was it? Peace, positivity, and personal power. So you can live the life of your dreams and fulfill your mission. So we'll post that link as well. Just to answer your question, I do some one-on-ones, although that's pretty rare these days, because I actually have a training program, Topocan Level 1 training, where I teach people how to do what I do. So how to do the healing work, how to tune in, align to source, ask the right questions through divine muscle testing, and then activate those higher frequencies and energies for energy healing, light medicine. And then I have level 2 trainees and graduates that actually do a lot of the work as well. So I do work with a handful of people a couple of times a year. And then the main thing that I do is train other people to be their own best healer.
Awesome. That all sounds so amazing, because I know a lot of empaths too, whether they are there now or they're going to find themselves there, but we really are called to be healers in a lot of different ways. So learning lots of tools to heal themselves and others is a really empowering way to, use our energy and travel on our own journey as empaths and sensitive people. This has been so fascinating, and given everything that we have talked about today, you've shared so many techniques and gems, but if there was one thing you were going to leave our viewers or our listeners today with next steps that they can do today to start today in their life to start implementing some of this, what would you emphasize would be something they can start?
Well, one of the things that I have found is foundational, we call it auto healing, if you will, or automatic healing, is being able to be fully yourself. And when you're fully yourself and all your energy circuits are in the present moment, as people have said over multiple books and spiritual teachers, I never really got it until now. When you're fully here, then what happens is you go into that auto healing mode. You're actually really connecting to the 0 point field where there are infinite possibilities. And this place, it's easy to learn. It's free. I have a free training. You can see it in my book, and there's a link as well in the book. It's called Stillness Through Observing Internal Movement. So this one technique, and it takes longer to explain it than it is to do it. I have a 27-minute training, but it takes about 2-3 minutes to do it. Then when you tune in into that 0 point field space and you feel all the energy in your body, you're fully present. And empaths tend to be really good at this technique. They're just turning their own superpowers inwards to be able to just feel what's going on in their body. That place, I call it the stillness. So that place is where we can automatically heal. That alone can change like the circumstances of our life. Things start to happen, synchronicity starts to happen. Things are less of a struggle. It's more like a flow. Just things happen. I could have one thought, although sometimes people laugh because, maybe Google or Facebook listen to your thoughts, Karen, but I can have one thought and then the next moment it's manifested somehow. I find the right person, the right link, the right book. I'll ask a question and then boom, the answer's there the next day. That's living in flow. So exciting, so amazing. And it starts with that foundation of the stillness. And I teach meditation very differently, Dr. Natasha. I'm not a big fan because I can't do, I'm not going to tell people to do something I can't do myself. I'm not a big fan necessarily personally of sitting there 40 minutes, oming or watching my breath, but I just get bored. Sorry, just do. So I use this technique. And what I found is if we can insert those milliseconds, seconds, minutes, 2 minutes at a time of stillness throughout our entire day, that makes a huge difference in our lives.
Wow, I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Dr. Karen. Thank you so much for being with us and sharing your wisdom.
It's been a great pleasure, Dr. Natasha. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate you hosting the summit. It's very, very important for those of us in this, in this field of healing and consciousness, to have all of our sensitives really be at their best. So thank you.
Absolutely. What a great session with Dr. Karen Kan. Thank you all for listening. We will see you soon.